Welcome back, everyone. It's the special edition of News at 5 as we do a preview of the State of the Nation address. President Cyril Ramaphosa has made many promises during previous State of the Nation addresses. The continent's first independent fact-checking organization, Africa Check, has gone back to find out whether the president has indeed fulfilled those promises made in the previous speeches. Let's see how the president fared. We're joined now in the studio by Africa Check researcher Kaylee Clifford. Kaylee, it's good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
He is sitting as we speak right now with those ministers in the economic cluster, and I would presume he is actually checking some of the numbers and checking those facts to make sure that when he does present the speech tomorrow, he's actually very factual and on point, especially in terms of the numbers. Let's take it a little bit back though, Kaylee, and look at maybe from 2016, some of the claims that have been made by the previous president, President Jacob Zuma, and then we're going to bring it into when he came in 2018 and up to now. But also interested to check if some of those numbers have actually shifted quite significantly. One of the issues that was raised in the previous speech in 2016, a statement made by former President Jacob Zuma, was that to curb water wastage, the Department of Water and Sanitation has begun its program of training 50,000 young artisans. Is that correct?
So essentially what the former president was referring to here was the government's War on Leaks project. And this was a program that they implemented to, as you say, curb water wastage. And the idea was that they would train 15,000 artisans, plumbers, water agents, and that these young people would then be able to go out into their communities, fix leaking taps, but also just generally educate people in their communities about how to save water. When Zuma made this claim in 2016, he was correct. The program had started and they were training people. But the progress, I don't think, has gone exactly according to plan. So initially they had broken it up into kind of 3 phases. And in phase 1, they were supposed to train 3,000 people. The latest records show that they only trained about 1,700. In phase 2, we were supposed to have seen 5,000 people trained. Only about 3,800 were. And in fact, phase 3 has been put on hold altogether. The Department of Water and Sanitation has said that they are facing funding challenges. So we're going to have to keep an eye on this and see how it progresses. We know from media reports last month that there was a renewal of commitment to the program, so it looks like government is still quite committed. So we hope that phase 3 will commence soon.
Okay, so there's the implementation of the program, but the numbers not matching at this particular point to those targets set. Any reason why the numbers are so low? Was there an interest and uptake in terms of people actually showing up and signing up for the program?
Yeah, so as to why is not really something that we would get into. We checked the numbers, they were not adding up. But like I say, we're keeping an eye on to see how phase 3 progresses. And I think at the end of the day, it's really about making sure that the promises that were made and the commitment that was made is stuck to.
So that is indeed correct. And let's look at the other claim that was made, that, and this is repeated quite often actually with us experiencing load shedding right now, that at the time he was making the statement, said there's been no load shedding since August last year. Was that correct?
Yeah, so he was referring there to August 2015, of course, making the speech in February of 2016. So quite a strong claim to be making, but we saw media statements from Eskom shortly thereafter to say actually there was load shedding as early as the 14th of September 2015. So he was incorrect there. And of course, we know today we're still facing these rolling blackouts. Eskom's continuing to struggle with their capacity shortages. And in fact, they came out last week to say that this could be the situation for the next 18 months. So.
Yeah, no, indeed. The grid remains very vulnerable, even though today we did not experience any load shedding. Right, then let's move on to 2017 and some of the claims that were made at that State of the Nation address, talking about the representation, gender parity at senior management levels. By all indication, at the time, the President said 67% of those in senior management level were still males, so males remaining rather dominant at that level, and females at 32.4%. Was that a correct claim?
That was correct, and we've looked at the numbers to find some more updated figures, and unfortunately 2018-2019 data shows that not much has changed. So when we're still looking at senior management level, we're looking at 65.5% male, and 34.5% female. So
God.
very little change in those percentages despite 3 years having passed.
And government announcing any active interventions there in terms of making sure that they up those numbers?
Well, we've seen claims over the last year about the gender equality in the President's cabinet. So we'll keep a close eye out tomorrow evening to hear what the President says. Hopefully he will announce something.
Yeah. In fact, I asked you earlier on if you will be sitting this time around and actually checking live what the President will be saying. You're saying you're not doing this time. You want to do a more in-depth dive in post the speech.
So Africa Check's been looking at State of the Nation addresses for over 6 years. And I think if Ramaphosa's track record is anything to go by, we can expect mainly accurate statements from him tomorrow evening. Zuma had a harder time sticking to the facts, so he was no stranger to our incorrect verdict when he was president. But this year we're really trying to take a different approach to the way we fact-check SONA. So usually we would kind of take a look at the whole speech and pick out almost every fact-checkable claim and fact-check it. Whereas this year we really want to take a deeper dive into the claims that Ramaphosa gets wrong. Not because we're trying to catch him out, but because we're really interested in why these types of claims are so often misunderstood and why it's important that he actually gets it right.
One of the claims that, of course, is misunderstood is the claim of government's involvement in the property sector. I mean, they put this on their manifestos and their campaign material as well. The claim of 4 million houses having been built, I suppose, since they came into government in 1994. Is that claim correct?
So this is a claim made by Zuma again in his 2016 State of the Nation address. And when we looked at data, we found that the numbers from the Department of Human Settlements didn't actually support what he was saying. So Zuma was saying 4 million houses since 1994. The department was saying it's more like 3 million houses. We did also consider the possibility that Zuma could have been referring to houses delivered as well as serviced sites. But it's important here to differentiate between the two because a serviced site is not actually a house. Essentially, it's a plot of land which is supplied with water and electricity and utilities, and the recipient can then build their own house on that land. So they're two very different things. But if we add the number of serviced units to Zuma's number of 3 or 4 million, we see then it kind of all adds up.
And where is that sitting right now? How many more houses have they been able to build?
So a steady decline since he made that statement. Each year we're seeing less and less houses delivered. Latest data is from the 2018-2019 financial year. And we see that this figure is now sitting at just over 3.2 million. And then, of course, if we include the housing opportunities, which includes things like service sites, then we see that figure growing to 4.7 million. 4.7
million, that's a broad number. But 3.2, you're saying, is the exact number of people actually being given housing?
So that's the interesting thing about housing statistics is that it's quite difficult to independently verify them. And experts have actually previously cautioned us that when we're looking at these statistics, they should be considered more indicative rather than, absolutely solid.
Yeah. Well, let's look at the tenure then of President Cyril Ramaphosa. In 2018, when he made the State of the Nation address, he mentioned that there are currently almost 1 million students who are enrolled in higher education, and up from 500,000 in 1994.
On the money. Yeah, that was correct. So when we look at data from 1994, there were about 525,000 students enrolled in higher education institutions. And that is an increase. So when we look now at 2015, we see that number growing, and we passed the million mark in 2017. So just over 1 million students enrolled in 26 different higher education institutes.
Right.
Yeah.
You did, though, catch him out. He did get some wrong, like the claim of nearly 1 million children who are participating in early childhood development facilities.
Yeah, so this claim we actually initially rated as correct, and it turned out to be something that was a lot more complicated. Because at the time, based on information we had received from the Department of Basic Education, it appeared as if there were over 1 million students participating in these ECD facilities. And shortly after that, there was research that emerged showing that actually this 1 million figure could be a significant underestimate. Oh. So we looked at work done by Martin Gustafsson, who's an economics researcher with Stellenbosch University. And he works widely on issues of education economics. So he looked at the data from Stats SA for the 2016-2017 financial years. And his estimates actually put the number of children participating in ECD at 2.4 million.
Wow.
So you can see it's quite a lot more than what Ramaphosa had actually claimed. We spoke to him earlier today to see if there had been any kind of update on these figures, and there haven't been any updates, but he didn't seem to think that the situation would have changed much since then. But what I really find interesting about this claim is the implications. So if many more children are participating in ECD facilities than what we think, what does that mean?
We are underspending.
Yeah, and so Martin seems to think that we need to focus our concentration more on improving quality of what we already have rather than expanding access to ECD facilities.
We create a lot of problems because that means we are not spending enough or allocating enough budget to early childhood development, certainly. All right, let's look at the other claim then that we need to check here. The claim of every month 17.5 million social grants are provided to South African. I think that is correct. I think it's a number that has been repeated many, many times.
Yeah, it's something that comes up all the time, and I suspect we'll hear it tomorrow night as well, and it is correct. When Ramaphosa made the statement in 2019, the latest data was from December 2018. It backed his statement, and even recent data shows that it's roughly about the same. In fact, it's growing a little bit. We can see that about 17,800,000 social grants were delivered on average every month.
Oh, goodness. What happens with this information? Do you give it to the president after he gets it wrong so that he can correct it next time he's standing on that podium?
Absolutely. I mean, it's not enough that we just publish the fact check and hope that people read it. We try to seek active corrections from people. And of course, everybody has a responsibility to share accurate information. But I think as a president, there's almost, this greater responsibility for him to make sure what he's sharing is accurate. So we will definitely go back to him with our findings, and hopefully he's receptive to them.
Kelly Clifford, we appreciate it. Thanks for coming through. We look forward to having you after this 2020 State of the Nation.